Okay, what we have here is something really cool. Let's take a look. So this is actually a, you guys already know what you're going to see, so I'm not going to be like a douche and be like, hey, guess what's in the bag? You already know what's in the bag. It's a Macintosh Classic. Before the Mac Portable, before the first PowerBook, Apple sold the Compact Mac, which was their bread and butter Mac, as a portable machine by selling carrying cases. Actually, I think these were made by third-party vendors for the most part. You could carry your entire computer system, keyboard, mouse, unit, and everything in a bag. Yeah, it'd fit in your car, take it with you. Now, the bag is trash. It's completely, it's just, no, It's discolored, it's in really bad shape. Let's take this out. So I got this today. It just came in the mail through some clever horse trading, so to speak, with a fellow YouTuber. And thank you very much. If you're watching, you know who you are. I traded my my HP Omnibook for this. I've had many of these units over the years, many of them, in fact, probably more than most people. I probably had about half a dozen of these, if not a dozen, come through my possession over the course of the past 20 years. The Macintosh Classic is it's special to me because it was the first Mac that I ever used outside of the Apple II. The very first Mac that I ever used was the Mac Classic, just like this one. And that would have been in 1995. And at that point, they were about 4 to 5 years old. And these were the last of an era. These were the end of the 9-inch black and white. 9-inch black and white compact Macintosh units. This was it. This was the swan song for that. Actually, technically, the Classic 2 would have been, but looks identical to the Classic. Anyway, so this is a very special machine in that it marked the end of an era for Apple that started with the 128, or the original Macintosh. The Classic 2 was a pretty well-featured system. I mean, you had lightweight, compact, sleek construction. They still had the external floppy port. They still had an external SCSI port like the Mac SE and the Plus. 2 serial ports, and they were pretty well made. I mean, these things are fairly robust. They're known for a couple of problems, mainly the analog board, which is the board that drives the display. Those can go bad, but they're usually fixable. The logic boards are known for capacitor failures, and it's a very common problem, especially as they approach, 20, 30 years of age. I think the capacitors started failing on the motherboards when they started hitting around 15 years of age. Now, every single one of these that I've ever owned has failed because of motherboard caps going. But now, this is why it's different. See, now they're old enough to be valuable enough to repair. Before they weren't. My first, 3 or 4 of these things, I had them when they were worth nothing. And you could not give them away. And it's really hard for some people to really comprehend that. But the truth is, vintage computers don't come out of the factory, as future collectibles. It takes years, sometimes decades, for older devices, older machines like this one, to become cult icons, or to become, collectible in the most basic form of the word. A good example of that, of course, and I've been making a lot of videos based on this one, but that Performa sitting over there, that is an example of a machine that only until recently has started becoming a collector's item. But these old Classics and Classic 2s, are collectible in their own way. They had built-in hard drives, for example. They had the Motorola 68K processor, the 680000, I think is that. You know, they have the ability to expand the memory to 4 megabytes. I think 4 is the ceiling on these. You know, they don't have any internal expansion. They do not have a PDS or a new bus slot or anything like that. But, you know, I think, you know, outside of an actual PowerBook, I think these are the most handy Macs to own. And every Mac collector should have one, either a Classic or a Classic 2. The Classic 2, one of the, if for whatever reason it doesn't say anything on the front, let's say somebody wiped off the silk screening, you can tell a Classic 2 from a Classic by looking at the side of the unit. The Classic 2 is going to have a speaker grill on the analog board side, which is going to be right over here. You're going to see 4 holes drilled into the side of the, or 4 holes, a series of holes drilled into the side of the case. So a couple of things I want to go over before we even get started. This is a video that's been a long time in the making, actually. I've been looking for one of these for a long time, working or not. And I just don't want to pay collector prices, which is why when a fellow YouTuber contacted me and said he would be interested in trading the HP Omnibook for it, I gladly took him up. Even if it didn't work, I would have done it. Because it's easy to replace caps on these things. It can be done all day long, very easily. That didn't sound right, anyway. But the fact that it came in excellent condition just blows my mind. A couple of things we want to talk about. Now, these are nearly 30-year-old machines by this point. The newest Classic 2 would have been manufactured sometime, I think, in late '92, possibly early '93. I don't feel like looking this up, but you can look it up yourself, when the end date was. And they were sold primarily to educational institutions. The Performa 200 is identical to this, and that would have been sold to consumers mostly. But the Classic and Classic 2s were sold to mostly educational institutions, businesses, and consumers, often through college and public school computer purchasing programs. So teachers could buy them, students could buy them, and these were not your entertainment machines. These were work machines. These were not meant for fun as much as they were meant for you know, doing actual work. And one way you can tell is by that beautiful 9-inch display. Okay, a couple of things. Yes, they're known for analog board issues, and I'm going to show you some ways you can tell if you have a lemon. The first thing you want to do when buying one of these, or if you're evaluating it for restoration or for preservation, take a bright light, like this LED light, and shine it on the screen. And if you still see, in the absence of the image, you got to do this with it turned off. If you see icons, lines, menu bars, then your screen has burn-in. This one does not have that problem at all. It looks pretty good. These old monochrome displays were very notorious for burn-in. Burn-in is what happens when you display a static image on a CRT or even a plasma screen for an extended length of time. Hours, days, weeks, months. And that cumulative exposure time, it's like a suntan, you know. You can't get rid of it, though. It's yeah, this one looks pretty good. I don't see any evidence of burn-in, so this is a pretty good CRT. Now we're going to fire it up. Now there's a really good chance that it won't start for us because, again, I did mention the cap issue. Capacitor failures are the #1 killer of these things. And the first time you can tell if there's a cap problem if it fires up to a checkerboard pattern. And let's go ahead and see what it does. Listen to that hard drive. That's another thing. Listen to the hard drive carefully. initially the drive sounds okay on this one, but as we leave it running for a length of time, the drive starts to get kind of noisy. You hear like a that kind of a sound. That's not good. It means the bearings are failing in the spindle motor. And see, look at how quickly that booted up. One thing I want to point out, this does not have the full OS on it. This actually only has the system boot file, and that's it. I have a concern that I didn't hear a startup chime. That bothers me. Either the sound is turned all the way down and it somehow remembers that, which I doubt, or I don't know, there's something not right with this machine. But we're going to crack it open and we're going to take a look inside. But back to where we were going with, back to where we were, some evaluation considerations. Look at the screen. Check it for pin cushioning. Look for focus issues. One of the great things about these monochrome displays is you don't have to worry about convergence on 3 electron guns. It only has 1. So you don't have to deal with the convergence of 3 guns. It just isn't an issue. So it's one less problem you have to worry about when shopping for a vintage Mac. These monochrome displays were pretty robust. Not a lot goes wrong with these things. And another thing, the Classic, and I'm not so sure about the Classic 2, but on the Classic, you can access all the screen adjustment pots from the back by removing the cover, which, by the way, is the cover that used to house the backup batteries in the earlier models, the Plus, the SE, SE30, etc. And I think the 120, all the way back to the first Mac, the 128. So I've already aligned the screen. It was off when I got it, and it was shaking a little bit. The screen would kind of shimmy, and that is another warning sign, but once I brought the horizontal in a little bit, it was way off. It was out too far. It went away. It started to clean up instantly. So so that's kind of a good thing. The hard drive, it may not be bad, but it's certainly not healthy. I mean, it's probably got not a lot of life left in it. That's not an issue. I have spare drives for these things. I think I have 1 left. 1 left, and it's ready to go. It's got all my software on it. The screen is nice and clear. It's bright. I have already made the adjustments I want to make with it, so it's good to go. I'm not worried about the screen. I am worried about caps, and I'm worried about a couple of other things. Let's crack it open. Now here's where things get kind of complicated for these old Macs, because you can't just open them with any tools. Something that people have often forgotten about. They used to sell special tools to open these up. It was a Mac cracker, I think is what they called it. It included a special long T15 Torx driver. It was either, no, I'm sorry, I think it was a T10 Torx driver. And it included a special tool for cracking the, basically separating the case halves. But we don't need that. That's not necessary. You can do the same thing with a screwdriver. This door, by the way, underneath that door is where you're going to find your display adjustments. They're not labeled, so you have to play around. 2. So this is the it's a T15, sorry, T15, and this is long enough to reach into the handle recess, which is a problem. Normally, you can't get in here with anything that they sell at any tool store. I've looked everywhere for a T15 long enough to get in there, and there just is nothing. Alright, this is what I came up with. This is a nut driver. It works. Alright, so while we're in here, we're also going to replace the Cmos battery. We're going to check it for any obviously failing caps. We're going to pop in my other hard drive. So we've got a lot planned today, much like the Performa did. So I don't think it's been opened. Let's see. They don't like to open. They really don't. For the first 1 or 2 times. They don't get in our way. Check this out. So this is not a good sign when you see screws that are rusting. not a good thing. Not a bad thing, not a good thing. I'm going to take a flat blade screwdriver and we're just going to nudge it a little bit. You don't want to dig in too hard because you don't want to mar up the plastic. But we're going to kind of nudge it, give it a reason to open. All right, I think it wants to now. Okay, so let's do that. Marring the plastic would be terrible. There we go. All right, let's have a look-see. Does this have a production date on it? No. No, it does not. But here, that's what the inside. These are not signed. The Mac Plus was, I think, the last, or no, the SE was the last one to be signed. Now, the Macintosh Classic and Classic 2 do have cooling fans. They're the only compact Macs, I think, that have them. I don't think the SE does. Let's take a look in here. Alright. Alright. This one, ooh, has a riser card. I didn't even know these had those. You know what it is? I've never owned a Classic. I've only owned a Classic 2. Let's take a look. Let me pull the camera off the pod here. So this is pretty clean. Okay, not too bad. But look at how simple these things are. I mean, you got your display, you got your analog board. I'm just looking for anything obvious, you know. Like, right, really? Okay, we're going to take this riser card out because I'm going to pull the board off. And we're going to take a look at that board. This is the RAM riser. I've never had a Classic apart, come to think of it. I've only had the Classic 2. A little bit of dust. I don't think that hard drive is original, though. Does it say what size it is? No. No, that does not look like a factory label to me. I think that's been replaced. Here's your analog board. Okay. Yeah, not bad. There's probably 100 videos online of these things being taken apart, so I'm not going to focus on that too much. Now what we're going to do is unplug the hard drive interface cable. It does look different from what I'm used to seeing on the Classic 2s. We're going to unplug the floppy cable, and then we're going to pull this out a little bit, give us access to the power connector. So I think the drive sled has to come off first. Is that right? Probably easier that way, so let's do that. I'm going to brace just long enough. I'm going to show you the offending caps that usually go in these. Usually always go in these. This slides right out. Yeah, this is not the same sled that I'm used to seeing in the Classic 2 model, but yeah, look at that. It looks like there is some moisture exposure over time. And oftentimes that does happen to these machines because they get left in garages and basements and closets and alright, so here's the board. This is the motherboard. This is it. That's all it is. And there's only a handful of caps and they are leaking. And you can tell they're leaking because there's an oily substance all around them. Look at that. So every one of these caps should be replaced. In fact, this one is actually corroding a little bit near the board. So these need to be replaced. Maybe not today, but tomorrow or the day after. What's going to happen is if they are left too long, you're going to wind up with a checkerboard pattern. These don't explode like most of your caps do these days. But that's what happens to them. Here's our clock battery. Let's just go ahead and yank that sucker out of there. It looks like it might actually be leaking a little bit. And it's not healthy. And this is the original battery. Look at that. XT0291 from 1991. Okay, out she goes. I have some new old stock batteries that I bought. I bought them 7 years, 8, 9, 10 years ago for work. And I still have them. Now while we got this all apart, oh, one more thing. So you'll notice that there's some RAM on board. Okay, so this machine would have had, I'm sorry, the Classic 2 differs by having the memory slots. It's got a couple of 30-pin slots on the board itself. So this is obviously the predecessor to that. So, and do I see corrosion in here? Oh boy, I think I do. I don't think I like that. That doesn't, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but maybe I should, oh yeah, there is corrosion. Well, that explains why we have no freaking sound. The thing is, the sound comes out of this connector and into this one. Goes into the analog board. The speaker's on the analog board. I don't think I like that. That's not good. What causes that? I've never seen that before. Actually, that's a new one. Which isn't good because one of these is corroded so badly that I don't know how it will ever work. Now, it's fixable, but just one more thing we got to look into. Yeah, this thing was left in a very damp environment for a long time. Yeah, those bearings, man. Ooh. Yeah. I don't know. What if I put my tongue on that? What would happen? Anyone? Any guesses? Dare me to? Just kidding. I mean, it's not dead. I mean, it's not. I mean, look, I have had drives that made noises like that for years and never died. So, I mean, it's just that I know that it's on its last legs, and I really don't want it to die on me. But, because I want to keep it, you know, running with a mechanical drive like it's supposed to. That, and I don't want to spend $1 billion on a flash drive. Give me a break. But hey, it is what it is. I might just go on a spending spree and buy as many SCSI drives as I can find, just to have them on hand, knowing full well that they're gonna die, because that's what they do. That's what they do best. That's what they do best. See this? This is me cutting out unnecessary footage. Let's talk about what ails this Mac. So when we powered it up, we found that it had excellent video. Everything works. I even tested the floppy drive, and I have a rule. It's a hard and fast rule. I never put anything in the floppy drive until I put in a cleaning disk. It's always a standard practice in my shop. That's what I do. I run a cleaning cycle on the drive, and then I start putting in valuable software. But first I put a lesser valuable disk, see if it reads and writes. It does, yay. And then I move forward with, you know, doing major things. I reloaded the operating system after letting the hard drive run for a substantial amount of time, after which time it started to quiet down. And I believe what happened was some of the grease in the spindle bearings started to kind of reconstitute itself. Let's just pretend that happened for now. Alright, the drive is working fine. It took a format, but here's another thing I want to tell you, and this is how I know for a fact this is not a factory Apple drive. So, when Apple ordered SCSI drives for their machines, they had a custom firmware loaded onto them so that the computer could identify that it was a genuine Apple drive. The utility known as Disk First Aid, not Disk First Aid, it was Apple HDSC Setup, will not run, in my experience, and I forgot this, I really forgot about this, but it will not run on a non-Apple drive. That is what I remember. And that is why the Apple HDSC setup utility will not run on this drive. But it will format, so that's good. We're good. I was able to reload Mac OS 7.1, even though the factory released OS, the factory OS on this machine, I believe, was 6.05 or 6.1 or something like that. Anywho, doesn't matter. Too long, didn't read. The drive did take a format and it did take a clean install of Mac OS 7, which we will look at in just a moment. But before we get to that, the system has no sound. To reiterate, it has very, very weak, very faint audio that is you can only detect it if you place the speaker right next to your ear. Now, if you plug in headphones, it also sounds very weak. There's like almost no amplification. What does that mean? Well, I initially suspected that the wiring harness is the problem. Now, there is some corrosion in this wiring harness caused likely by a combination of moisture. This thing could have been stored in a basement, in a garage, where it was damp. But there's some corrosion in here, and I don't like that. We're going to fix this. Don't worry about that. I'm going to get a can of deoxit, which should hopefully help. Now, I thought that was the problem. I'm thinking, oh, well, that's easy. The audio signal isn't coming out of this connector. This is, by the way, where the audio signal goes to the analog board. Well, it turns out that is not the case, because I don't hear much audio through the headphone jack either, and I should. It is an amplified jack. It should produce some audible audio, right? The speaker does produce audio, or does reproduce audio, but only a very small amount. So, what does this all mean? And how does it affect my tea prices in a certain Asian country? Well, here's what it is. We're going to take this board out. This is something I suspected would be an issue. You never buy one of these. Just don't ever buy one of these thinking it's going to be perfect and ready to go out of the box. Just don't even think about it. Because these 8 capacitors are to blame. So there are 47 microfarad 16 volt caps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lucky 7. Alright, okay. I'll shut up now. There are 7 of those, and then there's one itty bitty 1 microfarad 50 volt cap. Right. Oh shit. I ordered the wrong one. I ordered a 16 volt. And I paid extra for it. You suck. Anyway, looks like I've got to go back to the eBay and get another one. Oopsies. Alright, so those caps are they're just done. They're toast. And how can we tell? Well, take a look. There's electrolyte pooling all around them. Now what this usually does, and this caused a bit of a, I don't know if I want to call it a rumor or a misnomer, that you can wash these motherboards in the dishwasher and magically they're fixed. Don't do that. I tried that once for fun. Didn't work out. Anyway, the correct way to fix this board is to replace all the caps. Now what's unusual about this one is that this unit actually boots up. It doesn't produce a checkerboard pattern. It runs fine otherwise. Everything works except for the audio circuitry. In fact, if you trace these tracers, they go through this, what is that, a ferrite core or something? And they actually connect to, looks like one of these 2 caps at some point. There's a link somewhere in there. Yeah, it goes under, there's some resistors in the bottom. And yeah, so there's a problem there, and it's probably these 2 caps. These are, we know they're leaking. In fact, these are leaking too, and so are some of these. So these all have to be removed and replaced. There's just no way around it. I ordered them on eBay. They cost me like $10 for all of them. But that little sucker C3, which I bought the wrong one. I got a 16 volt one. I don't know why I did that. You know what? Alright, I found there's a neat website that I found, and I can't think of the link offhand, but if you search enough for it, you'll find it. Someone actually painstakingly went through and listed every capacitor that you need to recap not only the logic board, but the analog board, and not just for the classic, but the classic 2, the Performa line, the LC line, all of them. He actually went through and listed every cap you need for every one of these Macs that are notorious for cap issues. So we lucked out. We got one that boots up and it runs, but unfortunately the audio circuitry is just not happening. So we're going to have to fix that, and we're going to fix it soon. I have the parts on order, and I got to order another one. But that's a side issue. Now let's go ahead and fire it up, and I'm going to show you what this thing looks like running Mac OS 7. And it is kind of a dog. I have to be honest, I'm a little surprised at how slow this machine really is. It's running an 8 megahertz a 68K processor, which is right here. It's an MC68000FN8. It's an 8 megahertz. One more thing, if you buy one of these, get the riser card with it. Now, there's 1 megabyte of RAM on board, and there is 1 megabyte on the riser card with the ability to add 2 more 1 megabyte 30-pin SIMs. So if you don't have this riser card and you're stuck with a factory 1 megabyte onboard RAM, you know, good luck to you. You're going to want to probably buy another one of these because it's hard to get those boards by themselves. Another thing I want to tell you is that I looked up at LEM's website, Low and Mac. I found that the retail price for this Mac was $1,000 without the hard drive. You could buy them without a hard drive, which is this is really one of the last Macs I think you could buy without a hard drive as standard equipment, which is pretty interesting because these were sold in 1990 to 1991, I believe. And then the Mac Classic 2 came out, and it came standard, I believe, with a 40 meg hard drive. Let's put the hard drive back in, and we're gonna move on. So, a little bit of work. It's gonna be in another video. We're gonna do a follow-up on this one. It's gonna need it. I call these the Volkswagen Beetle of Macs because these were fairly iconic. The 9-inch monochrome Macs were fairly iconic for their time, and remain so today. I mean, they made so many machines in this basic case style. I mean, it changed. Over the course of a few years, it did change from the original 128 to the Plus, to the 512 to the Plus, to the SE series. They made some changes, but ultimately, you had the same formula: a 9-inch monochrome display, a 68K processor, built-in, digital audio, built-in floppy drive. I mean, these were all big deals back then. This was a winning formula for Apple, and they made a lot of these. They sold a lot of these to a lot of institutions and consumers alike. Putting in that last screw is a bit of a pain in the ass, but now, what else can I tell you about this machine? I mean, these were the first Macs that I ever had any exposure to. And they were a couple years old then. But let's put the 50-pin cable back. Once you get the cover off, they're pretty easy to work on. I mean, everything is kind of right there for you. And I find it kind of a pleasure actually working on these. I mean, the motherboard just slides right out. Just a couple of connectors and boom, it's out of the machine. Even the CRT is easy to replace. Very easy to replace on one of these things. Not that there's many CRTs being swapped out in these days. Let's fire it up. Mac OS 7.1. You're going to notice that there's no sound. There's no startup chime, but don't fret. It's really there. You just can't hear it. It's like Schrodinger's startup sound. Only I can, technically. Let's see if I can hear it. I'm going to put my head right up to the speaker. Here we go. I can hear it. Beep. I heard it. So let's listen to that hard drive and see if it quieted down. I ran it for about 2 hours straight last night. I just turned the screen volume brightness all the way down, and I just let it do its thing. I just let it sit here and run. So far, so good. I'm not going to make a video on cleaning that keyboard, but that keyboard is going to receive the full meal deal. I'm going to take it completely apart, I'm going to wash every key. I'm going to wash the backer plate. I'm going to wash everything. It's going to be brand new when I'm done. I will not be retrobrighting it. That is not going to happen. I'm done with retrobrighting. I did it on one machine. I'll never do it again. That having been said, when I buy my next house and I have a garage to work in, I intend to build a retrobright tank. I'm going to actually get a 50-gallon aquarium. This is all in my head. I'm planning on doing this. I'm going to fill that 50-gallon aquarium with all the solvents at the right proportions to retrobright something huge. An entire PC, for example. And I'm going to set up some UV lights, some Vita lights, which are used for the aquarium industry. And I'm going to see if I can, or if not those, I'll find some really intense sun simulating UV lamps. And I'm going to start retrobrighting stuff in large quantities. And because it'll be in, everything will be underwater, under liquid, I won't have to worry about all that paste drying out. It'll be controllable. I might even do like a series of pumps and waterfalls of retrobright solution. I got ideas. That's all I got right now. Listening to that hard drive, it's not twanging and banging and whining and grinding anymore. It sounds pretty good, which is surprising. It sounds amazing. It sounds really good. So that's really good. One more thing before we go. Our next video, of course, featuring this machine, I'm going to do a video on recapping it. I've got to get that cap order placed or finished. You got to fix. Yeah, I ordered the wrong one. We're going to do a recap on the analog, the logic board, and I think that's pretty much it. And then we're going to see if our sound comes back to a reasonable level. But before we go, I dug around in that moldy, musty old bag. No, not my Aunt Rose. I dug around. Let's not talk about Rose. I dug in that bag and look what I found. The owner's manual. But not to a classic. This is an original Mac 128 owner's manual, copyright 1983. I couldn't believe my eyes. This is an original manual. And look at that. It's like MacGyver. I can't believe it's here. And it looks to be, relatively complete. And inside here, I found this, a registration card for something. A laser engraver, perhaps? A music engraver. The HB music engraver. This is what I found in there. I'm not even sure what to do with that. But it's in there. I think the back cover may be missing on this. I'm not positive. But look at this. This is the early 80s Apple, owner's manual. They don't do that anymore. They don't do that at all. But the manual is moldy and musty and kind of gross, and but it's here, and it looks to be for the 128, at least as far as I can tell. I have to look further, but I believe this is definitely for a 128. The more I look at it, finding out more about your Macintosh. Look at this. Preppies. Look at that. Bird's Hills, 1983. The 128 was kind of a lemon. It was a flop, actually. It was kind of a flop. It even tells you how to take your Mac apart. Kind of, sort of. It just tells you what's in it. Doesn't look too far off from our classic, does it? Same layout. This is just amazing. So I'm going to put this on eBay. Somebody will buy it. Could be you. Could be yours. I'll even throw in the registration card for the music engraver. Because why not? Alright, well, thank you for watching. And look forward to, yeah. We're going to be doing some more stuff with this thing. So I'm going to be loading some software on it. I'm going to be It's going to be great. Insanely great.